Guys, welcome back to the land of books and movies. It is time for The Other Boleyn Girl. It's the first part of a multi-book series of historical fictions by Phillipa Gregory that starts with Mary Boleyn and sticks with everything she and her family had going on, starting with when they were entangled with Henry VIII and going from there. The Other Boleyn Girl was the only one made into a movie. An okay movie compared to the book. Also, fasten your seatbelts, folks. This is going to be a long one. It is quite chick flicky too, since we're getting the story from the first person point of view of Mary Boleyn. It's written with well researched historical accuracy and the right amount of dramatic license, and everything that happened in the movie did happen in the book, but with some rearranging of the timing of some of the events and really just the clip notes of everything that happened from the minute the deal was struck to pimp out Mary to the king to right after Anne Boleyn was executed. Now, for the uneaten fat of the book, which, like the movie, is very character focused. So for this video, I will go through the book one character at a time. And let's start with the other Boleyn girl herself. Yes, I know that in the movie there's a line where Anne denounces herself as the other Boleyn girl. In the book, she denounces Mary as the other Boleyn girl. Anyway, Mary is already a married woman at the age of 12 when her family conspired to groom her and pimp her to Henry VIII in order to get their social climb on. And as a side note, this is the 16th century when they considered a 12-year-old a grown woman and a 36-year-old an old woman. So anyway, Mary is married to William Carey, and everything's status quo until she's taken to court, installed in the Queen's household, and groomed by both her parents and siblings to be the perfect side piece. It's disgusting. They wash her and dress her like a prize pig. In return for rolling around with him, her husband is rewarded with lands and titles, and her parents are elevated. The king grooms her too, and she thinks it is love. At the same time, she admires Catherine of Aragon and is torn between her genuine concern and respect for her and what she thinks is love with King Henry. She knows he's hurting her feelings, but can't get out of her situation because she thinks it's love and it's paying off for her parents and her husband. Then she has two babies by the king by 15 years old, she's already considered, used up. She's got baby weight and she's got injuries from the deliveries. And the king is losing interest in her. So her parents start grooming Anne to sub for her but not steal him from her. All the while, the king is showing some wishy-washy behavior by spending time with Queen Catherine at appropriate times to keep trying to make a son with her while they're still young enough, while Mary is away from court and back home with her babies and her nurses and her husband. And so after she's kind of displaced and discarded by the king, she enjoys a few good years with William Carey, repairing the damage done to their marriage while her parents were just gifting her to the king. But a flu went around that knocked out a lot of people, including Anne, and William Carey didn't survive it, which is why she was free to eventually marry William Stafford. But more about him in a few minutes. Anyway, she finds peace there and wants to stay, but family eventually keeps yanking her back until she runs away. She runs from them and travels for days and nights, getting filthy and flea-bitten, all the way back to her children and William Stafford, who is basically just the family's farm boy. But he's kind of ahead of his time. He doesn't let any of those past indiscretions and her being a widow at 14, stop, you know, interrupt his feelings for her. They fall in love, they marry, and they have a third child together. And she starts to settle into a simpler life with him, and Anne disowns her and banishes her from court until things have gotten so bad that she needs her. More on that in a few minutes. Now let's talk about Henry VIII a little, a classic narcissist who churns and burns every female put before him. The injury he suffered that put Anne in bad color with him near the beginning of the movie happened in the book closer to the end when the rumors were circling that Anne was dabbling in witchcraft. It was an injury to his leg that never fully healed. It kept leaking abscess and smelled bad. It probably should have been debrided if not amputated, but 16th century healthcare. What are you going to do? Before I forget about it, England and Spain were united at war against France. And after that war ended, relations between England and Spain kind of went sour, and Henry was up in Catherine's face, accusing her of treason, which was the beginning of the end. Not just because she didn't have a son for him and Mary did. So let's talk about Catherine of Aragon for a moment. The depiction of her from book to movie is the closest match. The talent looks appropriate. I can believe this is a 36-year-old woman. I cannot look at ScarJo and Natalie Portman here and see a 12 and a 14-year-old. Anyway, Catherine has a gift for being graceful under pressure, being forgiving, and keeping a stiff upper lip when being insulted left and right by social climbers pimping their kids to her husband left and right in front of her, and installing them in her court at the same time. Hearing gossipers say that the king is still so young and handsome and need not waste his life on this old lady who hasn't squeezed out any princes. Finally, she maintains her dignity during the divorce trial and her banishment to another court all the way on the other side of the country. The movie only leaves out the suspicious circumstances of her death. So let's talk about Elizabeth Boleyn for a minute. The movie shows us a mother who loves her kids, but will put up and shut up until the bitter end, when she learns too late that it was never worth it. In the book, she's complicit with her husband and her brother, and a disgusting social climbing groomer too. Now let's talk about George Boleyn. He's pretty closely copied from book to movie. He's close to Mary and Anne, and he hates the match made for him with the social climber and gossiper Jane Parker. And what is only in the book is that he was arrested, tried, and beheaded because he was caught with a boyfriend. And I saved the best for last. Time to talk about Anne Boleyn, the social climber who really sets the benchmark and paid the ultimate price, and whose story is a stark lesson that sometimes getting what you want can be the worst thing that could ever happen to you. The movie depicts Anne Boleyn as a loving sister at first to Mary and George, but was corrupted by jealousy and ambition. The movie tells us that she was supposed to be the one being pimped out to the king because Mary was already taken, but oopsie daisy, her horsing around got him injured, and he didn't like her anymore until she got back from France. In the book, at the time Mary is 12 and Anne is 14, and their plans are still on the drawing board, Anne is already in France. When she comes home, she goes with Mary to court to help her with the grooming, and she brings with her French customs and court fashion, which really offends Queen Catherine since France and Spain were enemies at the time. It's also in the book and the movie that she runs off with Henry Percy, which gets them both in deep shit, and she gets exiled back home, not back to France. And when they bring her back to court, it's after Mary has had her second child, and she's still carrying baby weight and delivery damage. So their parents groom Anne to the center of the king's attention while Mary is recovering. And the king still hasn't discarded Catherine and is still trying for a son with her. It's all very complicated. And when political heat reaches fever pitch between England and Spain, Henry finally exiles Catherine to another palace somewhere out in the sticks, out of sight and out of mind. But unlike in the movie, he never formally divorced her. Two different cardinals were consulted about the validity of their marriage, and they didn't agree because Queen Catherine of Aragon was the widow of King Henry's brother. So they're trying to say it's not valid for a man to marry his brother's widow. So anyway, Anne was installed as the next Queen of England, much to the chagrin of the people. They snubbed her everywhere she went. In the movie, King Henry is struck with immediate buyer's remorse with everything Anne had him do. Break with the Catholic Church and send Catherine packing. In the book, he was just as happy to be relieved of them. However, try as she might, Anne could not curb Henry's appetites. Once they were married, she was coronated, and she was pregnant, he lost interest in her. And her parents moved in right away, pipping out their nieces to him to keep their social standing high. But Anne did not have Catherine's quiet temperament. She would berate the king in front of everyone whenever he cheated. She disowned Mary when she told her that she married William Stafford in secret and had another baby with him. And when she had her daughter Elizabeth, what happened in the book also happened in the movie. She went through all this labor, and his level of enthusiasm amounted to, "All right, thanks for the baby girl. Now give me a baby boy." So they kept trying, and Anne had 2 more miscarriages. And here's where her mother was especially cruel, unlike in the movie. After her first miscarriage, she's not even out of bed yet before her mother orders George to help her clean up the miscarriage and dispose of it in the fireplace and disguise the smell by burning pine cones and whatnot. But Anne does not give up, even after Henry is older, overweight, and dealing with a little ED. In the book, Anne secretly consults a practitioner of what we consider today to be the holistic arts. Back then, they called it witchcraft. She conceives again and carries for a good amount of time to consider this, a third time charm. But no, Anne goes into a preterm labor in front of everyone and delivers a deformed stillborn, which, in tandem with King Henry's unhealed leg injury and impotence, gives rise to the accusations of witchcraft. She's arrested and locked up and given the choice to abdicate and be sent to a convent for the rest of her life, which in the book she accepts, but is beheaded instead. The book and the movie match up one last time with some briefings on what happened after, but in the book only for Mary and William. They moved back to their farm and raised their kids. Her 2 kids with Henry, the kid they had together, and Anne's baby, who would eventually have her glow up to be Queen Elizabeth I with her siblings at her side. And that's the story of The Other Boleyn Girl. Thank you for joining me again this week. Please consider subscribing if you haven't yet and supporting my channel through my Patreon or my affiliates. And see you next Book and Movie.